Some crimes happen in the dark, but some hide in plain sight for decades. Today, the story of a man the FBI quietly called the Toy Box Killer, even though the truth behind that name was almost impossible to prove. David Parker Rey lived in the tiny desert town of Elephant Butte, New Mexico, a quiet place where the sun bleaches everything and where strangers rarely come without a reason. To the people around him, Rey was ordinary, a friendly mechanic, a man who kept to himself, someone you would never look at twice. But behind that calm exterior, Rey built a world of control and domination, a world that no neighbor, no co-worker, and not even his closest family ever imagined existed. For years, women disappeared in the surrounding areas. Some were drifters, some were travelers, some simply vanished without a trace. Their cases were never connected because nobody had a reason to suspect a middle-aged mechanic who seemed so normal. Later, an FBI agent would say, "The most frightening thing about Rey wasn't what he did. It was how silently and systematically he did it." Rey was methodical. He kept records. He drafted rules. He studied control like a professional discipline. And he did it all undetected in a small trailer located right next to his house, a place later infamously nicknamed the Toy Box.
The case finally exploded in 1999, not because police found evidence, but because one woman managed to do the impossible. She escaped. According to investigators, she fled the trailer barefoot, injured, and desperate for help. But what struck officers later was not just her condition, it was how clearly she described the man who held her, David Parker Rey. She told them about restraints, instruments, and a voice that spoke calmly as if everything was just routine. And when deputies arrived at Rey's property, they expected chaos. Instead, they found a room organized like a workspace, cold, sterile, and terrifying in its precision. Investigators said it looked less like a crime scene and more like a place designed by someone who planned every second of what happened inside. The escape forced police to look deeper, and within hours, Rey and his longtime partner were arrested.
When detectives began searching Rey's trailers and outbuildings, they found journals, detailed notes, dates, locations, and descriptions of dozens of encounters. Not all entries could be verified. Some read like logs, others like confessions, and some investigators couldn't decide if they were real or fantasies he wrote to justify his actions. But what made the FBI uneasy was how consistent the entries were, how organized, how deliberate. One agent later admitted, it wasn't chaos, it was structure. Someone spent years refining this system. Police found equipment, diagrams, and even audio tapes, all suggesting Rey had been active for a long time. But the most disturbing question was the one they couldn't answer. How many victims were there? Some tapes hinted at decades of activity. Some journal entries mentioned multiple locations, and several women in nearby towns had disappeared over the years with no explanation. But without physical evidence, many questions remained unanswered. One of the most unique and tragic elements of the case was the condition of Rey's survivors. Many had fragmented memories, gaps in time, or trouble recalling details. Some had only flashes, sounds, voices, sensations they could not fully place. Psychologists later explained that the intense trauma, fear, and shock can cause memory loss. But it also meant that countless potential victims could not provide testimony strong enough to stand in court. This created a strange paradox. Rey might have harmed many women, but legally, only a few cases could be proven. Some investigators believed Rey knew exactly what he was doing, choosing isolated victims,
using psychological manipulation and creating confusion so deep that it was nearly impossible for them to testify. For the FBI, this was one of the most frustrating cases they had ever seen. A detective stated, "We had stories, we had patterns, we had his own words, but we didn't have the final link, the physical proof." Rey eventually accepted a plea deal that avoided a long trial. But in that courtroom, as transcripts were read, investigators and family members listened to descriptions so cold and emotionless that several officers later said they would never forget them. Rey didn't shout, he didn't deny, he didn't show remorse. He simply spoke like someone describing daily routines, with the calm of a man who believed he had done nothing unusual. He was sentenced to 224 years in prison. But for the families of missing women, the story didn't end with a conviction. They wanted answers. Rey refused to cooperate. He never revealed how many victims there really were. He never admitted to killing anyone, even though investigators strongly suspected he had. To this day, not a single confirmed murder victim has been found, a haunting mystery that keeps this case alive in true crime history.
In 2002, only 3 years after his arrest, David Parker Rey died of a heart attack in prison. And with him, died the truth. No one ever learned the real number of victims. No bodies were conclusively linked to him. And the desert around Elephant Butte still holds secrets that may never be recovered. After his death, one FBI agent summarized the case with a single sentence. He was the most organized predator we ever saw, and the one we understood the least.
David Parker Rey left behind a legacy of unanswered questions, fractured memories, and a fear that silence can be the most dangerous weapon of all. In the end, the desert kept its secrets, and the truth remains buried somewhere in the New Mexico heat.